spelled out how the political arena in itself is shaping?
I think, the by-elections, as I said, it's an election year. What happens tells you what will happen in the general elections. When you look at the by-elections outside Kampala and maybe major towns, NRM dominates. When it came to Kampala, and I think the key by-election was the one in Kawempe.
Yes.
Kawempe North.
Yes, Kawempe North.
I think it was one that showed how the general election, the mood of the general election, the involvement of the army, the movement, all those contradictions that can happen in a competitive election. It's happened in Kawempe North, and of course the opposition candidate won, the NUP. That shows you that probably NUP is going to dominate the Kampala and Wakiso in the general election. But when it comes outside the two urban centers, the NRM dominates. And that also showed in the NRM primaries. In the NRM primaries, the voting patterns. The voting patterns, you remember in the NRM primaries, the voting patterns in Kampala. In the rural constituencies, which mass constituencies, there were long lines, and when it came to Kampala, you saw there was a lot of disinterest in the NRM primary. So the by-elections was a precursor to the what would happen in the main election, and that was one of the major events also when it comes to the election year. But having said that, the general election is the events that happen before the general election are normally not very, things can change. For example, before the nominations, all these stories of the likes of Mao getting nominated, the likes of so many candidates crossing from the opposition then had not happened. So sometimes things change in an election year. Things change, and they can change very quickly. And as campaigns heat up, as campaigns get into the last leg, we are yet to see some of the things that can happen during an election.
Is it critical for us to look at how especially the ruling by the Supreme Court, how it has since shaped the operations of government, the engagement of the military with the public, especially after the Supreme Court nullified presence, and later the law in itself was returned to the scene, especially with the appointments of recent to the chairperson of the court martial, and also filling the other units of the court martials.
Well, the Supreme Court judgment was a major milestone. At first, we thought that it would have settled the discussions around whether civilians should be tried in the military court, and we thought that the government and the government would respect or would implement the directives of the Supreme Court of the judgment. It gave several directives, including transfer of all files of people who are being tried in the military court to the civilian courts. And I know that process dragged on. And in the middle of that process dragging on, there was a law that came, an amendment. And, there was an amendment to the EPDF Act. And now I think that ruling has been overtaken by events, because an amendment has been done and civilians can still be tried in the military court. But having said that, we thought that by the power of that ruling, figures, stakeholders in our political processes, like Chiza Besigye, who was being tried in the
court martial.
In the court martial at that time.
At the time.
His case having been transferred to the civilian courts, we thought they would get a leeway of getting out of jail and maybe joining the political the political activities, but that hasn't come to. So though it was a major milestone, its impact has not been felt in the political because of how government then implemented the directives of the ruling. Yeah.
That's a very one. I think that's a very interesting one for us to keep watching, especially on who will be the first culprit to end into the general court martial, considering that the appointments were made and we are waiting to see how operations start in the court martial. But also the critical stories that one would want to pay attention to, the story of rationalization that happened in Uganda this very year. And it's critical for us to look at it and probably look at whether that has been able to impact on how the institutions of government have been operational. Do you think they have?
For me, that sort of rationalization, on paper, it looks a noble thing to do, to rationalize and to be efficient in public services, especially delivery of public services. But on the ground, I'm going to give an example of two agencies that were rationalized. One of them was the Uganda National Roads Authority, UNRA. And another one was the Rural Electrification Agency, ERA. Once these agencies returned to government, to the mother ministries, I think services in these two areas have dragged. When you look at the state of the roads, one of the reasons I have not gone home is that the road that goes home is in a
so you don't want to feel the pothole business.
Anyway, there's other reasons I'm not. But the road is in a solid state. When you look at, it was not, some of the agency was wise too, but some of the agency was not wise. And then when you come to rural electrification, that agency was running so many rural connectivity projects, and once it was returned to the mother ministry, I think most of those projects stopped. So, but I think some key agencies that there was a need for an evaluation of which agencies needed to go and which agencies. I think people did the evaluation, but I think some of the agencies, it was not realistic to rationalize them. And the best I can pick is the Uganda National Roads Authority and the Rural Electrification Agency. The rest, I don't know.
Including coffee.
Yeah, there's one about coffee that was, there was the Coffee Development Authority that drew a lot of emotion. I think coffee farmers thought that they were better off remaining with the Coffee Development Authority than the authority being
under the government directly.
Yes, yeah.
It's something we watch. I think the president has had some explanations to make, especially when this election, as it traversed through many parts of Buganda. It's part of the things that he continues to talk about, including his own chairpersonship. The NRM SEC group keeps talking about that, especially in Buganda. But for the different areas where we have seen, especially the agencies that do rationalization operate, Benson Ongom, I want to hear from you and see, from where you sit, the rationalization of government agencies, has it been in position to deliver to the expectation of government away from reducing on what government said was a large number of workforce without delivering to the expectations? Are you in position to see whether indeed these have been able to, one, deal with the efficiency of government, but also whether indeed they have been able to deal with the question of the expenditures of government? Do you think that has been, especially coming from the fact that many of these institutions, their workers were absorbed by government?
Shamim, as I think Waso in the studio said, the